Hey guys, and welcome to another edition of GOAT Movies, the podcast for the simple movie lover, where we discuss movies we've recently seen and see if they have what it takes to become the next greatest of all time. What makes a GOAT movie? Is it quotable? Is it lovable? Is it any-able? You'll find that out today and more. You may want to rethink the size of that boat, or if you even want to get in the water. Today we're reviewing The Meg. Hey guys, and welcome to another episode. Today I am actually flying solo, or should I say I'm swimming solo. Today we are reviewing Jason Statham's latest movie, The Meg. It is about an hour and 53 minutes long. It is considered to be an action, horror, sci-fi film. And this is definitely the sign that the summer movie season is coming to an end. Let's go ahead and get the rating system right out of the way because I have a lot to say about this movie, okay? So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being absolutely horrible, worst movie I've ever seen, not worth your time to go bootleg, and 10 being the absolutely best, you're gonna spend the money, go see it in theaters. I have 0.5 to dish out however I'd like, because sometimes you just need that little extra oomph to get it out. This movie, I am rating the lowest score that I have ever rated in this movie podcast. This movie is actually going to be rated a 4. I couldn't believe how bad this movie was. It was completely and totally predictable. You saw everything coming. And, I mean, this is basically the movie Sharknado with a budget, okay? Sharknado is this cult classic movie that everybody jumped onto this bandwagon when it first came out. It was so bad, the graphics were horrible, but yet everybody loved it because it was so bad. And I guess they thought if they put some money into it, if they got some good names like Jason Statham, even Rainn Wilson, Dwight from The Office, that maybe it would have made a little bit more money for them, that maybe this was going to be, gold, this was going to be cash in the bank. But it's like nobody could understand what was going on with this movie. I couldn't believe it. We're not going to get into the spoilers just quite yet, but I do want to go over some of the statistics of this movie. So the budget was $150 million. That was estimated. It has only grossed non-US, according to this information, $34.5 million. I mean, this movie was just so bad, guys. I'm looking at a lot of the user reviews, just basically on some of the titles that these people are using. Let me read it to you. Everything you would guess. Disappointed. The Meg was meh. Mediocre and predictable. Shockingly bad. A very forgettable summer blockbuster. This was really bad. They should have called it The Meh, not The Meg. Mediocre. And here's another one. Sharknado style of fun. I mean, reading this review here, honest thoughts on the film by Jason Statham and director, even they knew that this movie was not going to be great. This is trying to become one of these new cult classics, but it was just so awful. The only thing that made this movie worthwhile for me is the fact that I went to my favorite movie theater, Studio Movie Grill in Colleyville, Texas. Shout out to you guys. They are the absolute best there. I've been to a lot of other studio movie grills, but actually the one in Colleyville, Texas is my favorite one. They are particularly super nice there. They know me by name. They greet me from the moment that I step in the door. They are so quick. The food is always on point. I've never had an issue with them. Just great overall. The other thing that made this movie worthwhile for me is the fact that there was people behind me that would not shut up throughout the entire film. And typically that's a bad thing, but this movie was so bad, I didn't mind it. I actually preferred their commentary on this than the movie itself. And usually what I find very interesting is that I can typically tell if a movie is going to be good or bad if throughout the movie I end up getting up and going to the restroom. I don't know what it is about my bladder. My bladder has a mind of its own where if it's a bad movie, it's going to make me get up and go. If it's a good movie, it knows its place and it just shuts up and waits till after the movie's done. So I want to go ahead and jump into the spoilers right away so that we can go ahead and talk freely about this, because I do have a lot of scenes that I want to talk to you guys about. So just to recap, I am issuing this a 4 as my rating for this movie. I really don't think it's worth your time to even go to the dollar theater. This is definitely going to be one of those movies that is going to be airing on the Discovery Channel during Shark Week. So if you just wait, you'll be able to see it for free on television. I mean, it was bad. I can't believe that Jason Statham would agree to make a movie like this. It was really Sharknado meets Jaws meets Jurassic World. And again, this is just a sign that the summer movie season is coming to an end. Kids are getting ready to go back to school. I'm sure parents are glad that they don't have to worry about the kids anymore. I'm going to be honest, when I first saw the trailers for this, I thought, man, this movie is going to be really bad, but it's going to be so bad it's going to be good. No. I went into this movie with not very high expectations. I knew what I was getting myself into, and I was disappointed more than I even thought I would be. So before we even go any deeper, no pun intended, let's go ahead and play the trailer for The Meg, after which we'll go ahead and issue our spoiler alert, and we will talk a little bit more in detail about this movie. So without further ado, here you go. Here's the trailer.
What's that?
There's a monster outside.
What you people discovered is bigger than we ever thought possible.
How big is that thing?
It was the largest shark that ever existed.
A living fossil.
Thought to have been extinct for over 2 million years. Wrong.
My God. It's a megalodon. He's kidding, right? That thing's out there. You need to find it and kill it.
Why don't you just put a tracker on it? Did you guys ever watch Shark Week?
He looks heroic, but he's kind of got a negative attitude. Chew on this, you ugly.
All right, there you have it. The trailer for The Meg, now in theaters, starring Jason Statham, rated PG-13. If you are actually going to go and spend your money to watch this movie and you don't want any spoilers, here it is, folks, your spoiler alert.
Red alert!
Anything that we discuss beyond this point is absolutely fair game. Spoilers definitely in store for you. So right off the bat, I mean, just listening to the trailer, you can tell that they can't determine whether or not this movie is supposed to be a horror film, an action film, or a comedy. And I think they tried a little too hard to combine all of them. I think you need to pick one and go with it. and you can put little bits of each genre just sprinkled along to kind of, for lack of a better term, add flavor to the movie. If it's going to be an action film, make it an action film and sprinkle in some comedy. That's great. That's fantastic. If it's going to be a horror film, be a horror film. Throw in a little bit of comedy just to kind of balance it out. This movie, they couldn't decide what it was. One of the interviews that I was reading was that they changed the script a bunch of times on Jason Statham, and some of the clips that they had inserted were not in the original script that he had agreed to. I think that is a travesty on behalf of the actor, because he has to get into a certain mentality in order for him to portray the character appropriately. And I don't blame Jason Statham at all whatsoever. I think he tried his best with what he had, and the movie was horrible. There's really just not much to say. This is probably going to be one of my shortest podcasts ever because the movie was so bad. I couldn't even get my friends to go with me because they knew that the movie was going to be so bad. I knew it was going to be bad. I knew what I was getting myself into. So, right off the bat, Jason Statham is with his crew, and he's saving, I guess it's like a nuclear sub or something that has been attacked. And he's trying to rescue everybody. He rescues, I think, like 15 people or something. And something starts chomping at the side of the submarine. We don't know what it is, but he saw the shape of a mouth come at him through the submarine. There's no windows or anything. And he knows that the submarine is going to explode, essentially. So he needs to get everybody out. He tells his team, we've done all that we can. Let's go ahead and get out of here. He climbs back into his submarine, and his crew, they don't make it. So he has to make the decision whether or not to save the people that he already has in submarine or to wait for his crew. And very Titanic scene, very gut-wrenching scene. He decides to close the hatch and save everybody and leave his team behind. So as he's pulling away, the submarine explodes, and I guess it's like the captain or the skipper or someone that he had just rescued was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And we later come back to find this guy. And this guy is basically the chief medical officer on this new lab where we later find him, right? But when we first meet him, he kind of comes across as someone with authority and yelling at Jason Statham as to why he's leaving his crew behind. Dude, beggars can't be choosers here. You're being rescued. And Jason Statham had a very difficult choice to make. Save everybody else or let everybody die. I mean, we've seen this in cinema time and time and time again. They did it really well in Armageddon, where Bruce Willis is about to leave Ben Affleck on the space station, and they don't want to leave anybody behind, and it's either everybody on planet Earth or Ben Affleck. Between you and me, I kind of would have preferred Ben Affleck to be left, but hey, that's just me. Anyways, so obviously leaving his crew behind, you get the impression that they've worked together for a long time, so he's definitely got a relationship with these people, and he is a, I guess, world-renowned lifesaver or something like that. It's not too clear what branch of the government he's in. I'm going to assume it's the Navy just because it's dealing with water, but he is obviously disgraced, he's distraught, and this guy actually made a claim. You find it out later on in the movie. This doctor made a claim that he was going under some sort of deep pressure psychosis or something like that. Basically that his judgment was impaired and that there was really nothing outside of the submarine, that he was just hallucinating because of the pressure on his brain from being so deep in the water. Like I said, this movie is just everywhere. I don't want to go from start to finish on this movie. I just want to focus on certain clips. The movie itself jumps around because there's not a lot to this storyline. Giant shark little people, all of a sudden, we are no longer at the top of the food chain. That is basically it. Unless you get out of the water, then what's the shark going to do, right? So, I mean, we're at this state-of-the-art lab facility, which I thought was pretty cool. I've actually been always drawn to the water. I thought, for lack of a better word, life under the sea would be awesome. I've always thought that the ocean life was pretty amazing. You know, we spend a lot of money in exploring space, and I don't think we spend enough money exploring our own Earth. And I think the ocean life is amazing. There's a whole nother world that a lot of people don't know about, and I've always been drawn to that type of stuff. So I think that's another reason that I was really drawn to this movie. Based on the trailer, he's in this state-of-the-art laboratory that's underwater, so I think that's pretty cool. The thing about it is that Rainn Wilson's character, Morris, he is actually the one that is paying for this laboratory. He's paying for these things to be explored. And this is one of the only movies where a person actually has to say that he is a billionaire instead of just allowing the audience to naturally come to that conclusion, because it's obvious he's flying in on a helicopter, he's got a suit on, he's being greeted by, I guess, what would be considered the director of this lab or the head honcho, and there was a particular scene in there where he's like, hey, I've got $1 billion, or someone makes reference to that fact. And that to me was just like, that was lazy writing. They knew that they couldn't explain it, why he was there, but it is what it is. So they're exploring some sort of natural phenomenon where we have all thought for years and years that this was the bottom of the ocean floor, but it's actually not the bottom of the ocean floor. There's like sulfur or some sort of gas that won't let our sensors penetrate, and it's, I guess, keeping warm water below it, but letting the cold water stay above, so it's like a barrier. It's its own natural barrier, and he believes that there's going to be new life below this barrier. And of course, this is what leads to them puncturing a hole through this protective barrier, and all of a sudden their explanation of this was just completely and totally, you see a thermal image of this barrier, right? And it shows that this huge gap after one of their submarines gets lost underneath because it starts getting attacked by the Meg. They get together and they start talking about how they're going to rescue these people, and that they've only got a certain amount of time before they run out of oxygen or whatever. And again, just like in my last podcast, where are these people that 18 hours turns into like 5 days? It's ridiculous. I'm not an eccentric billionaire. I've never flown on a private jet, but my line of thinking is that you're not able to get from one side of the earth to the other in a split second. But hey, this is the cinema, this is the movie, of course, it's just part of the storyline. But, so we find Jason Statham's character, he's a drunk, he is just living with the fact that he had to let his team die, and he's the one and only person that can save these people who are stuck after the Meg has attacked them, right? And there's also, like, as you can tell, I'm even struggling to talk about this movie because there was no plot, there was no point. They were just throwing things in left and right. You have this little eccentric little girl, she's got to be like 9 or 10, I'm a horrible judge of age, but she's supposed to be super smart, but she's not, that interesting. She's got a very just plain look on her face. She doesn't have a lot of expressions. Her character was completely and totally unwarranted, unneeded. She was just some sort of relief, I guess, for the main characters. There's a scene where Jason Statham is in the lab. He's just rescued everybody, and it's, for lack of a better word, gratuitous sex scene. But there's no sex. He's just walking around his cabin that has a giant glass window And he's walking around with just a towel wrapped around. And then the director's daughter walks in and she's like, oh my gosh, you're naked. Oh, I should leave. But then she peeks back in. I mean, Jason Statham works out, and yeah, if I was that, I'd be walking around like that all the time. But it made no sense in the movie. And then we're led to believe that the people that he's saving, which he did end up saving them, one of them was his ex-wife, but we only find out that it was his ex-wife much, much later on. There was no flow to it whatsoever. So we're in the middle of the ocean. We break through this barrier. We have the Meg attack, even though we never see the Meg. And Jason Statham is in Thailand somewhere, and we fly over there to go get him. We bring him back. He goes down. He gets them. And then, oh my gosh, the thermal imaging shows that when the submarine came back up, it punctured a hole through this, and it was just wide enough to let a 90-foot shark through. Really? Okay, so there's got to be a reason and a rhyme as to why we haven't seen this shark. Sharks can't survive in cold water. I don't know if that's true or not. I am not a marine biologist, so I don't know the accuracy of that. But essentially, this shark has been living underneath that barrier. And, of course, there's also a giant 90-foot squid or something like that, because that latches on. They were just throwing all these creatures into the fray, and it was just awful, guys. I mean, there's really not much to say other than that. The whole storyline was stupid. We meet Jason Statham's character. He's introduced to us by them playing the song, Hey Mickey, You're So Fine, but not in English. I want to say it was in Thai. So then, of course, that scene was pretty just awkward, and they're trying to bribe him into coming back, and again, this movie was just everywhere, guys. Everywhere. I don't want to cover the movie from start to finish. If you're gonna go spend the money, go ahead and do it. Don't listen to me, but I think you're gonna regret it. And I think this is gonna be, later on, one of those movies that is so bad that later it becomes a cult classic. I'm not a big fan of those. I've never liked Sharknado. I've never liked any of those. To my friend Des, I know you loved those, but I could never get into them. Napoleon Dynamite was one of those movies. I could never get into it. I heard that so many people love that movie and that it's one of the greatest comedies of all time. No, it's not. It was awful. I've tried 4 times to watch that movie, and I've turned it off each time, right? There was also a scene with a little Maltese dog. You see it in the trailer as well. That little dog, it made no sense. It made absolutely no sense. There was a scene that I do want to talk about where they actually catch the Meg, right? And it's that scene that we see in the trailer where Dwight Schrute, he's always going to be Dwight Schrute to me. He's like, why don't we just tag him? Don't you ever see Shark Week? So we actually catch the Meg. And as they drag him out, because they've poisoned him, there's a poison dart that they've used, and they hit the Meg with it, and he's actually dead. And we've fished him out. So, of course, we're going to be cutting this giant shark to pieces to study him. And as they're sitting there and they're like, oh, yeah, let's take pictures with him, this and that, this other, even bigger megalodon jumps out of the water, snatches that shark, and eats him. And flips the boat over, and now all of a sudden we have 2 megalodons. So one wasn't enough, now we've got 2. Again, there were so many scenes in this movie where you think, okay, that's it, we're good, the movie's over, and it just keeps going and going. They could not make up their mind. Whoever wrote this, produced this, they could not make up their mind as to which direction they wanted to go. This is literally one of those movies where somebody sat around thinking, yeah, sure, that sounds like a good idea. Go ahead, throw that into the mix as well. Not very well thought out, not very well executed. Definitely a movie that they used Jason Statham's name for it, and I think that is a bad call for Jason Statham. An actor is only as good as his last movie that he makes, And if Jason Statham keeps making movies like this, I mean, that's going to be it for him. I really think he's been typecast. I really would like to see him in something different. But Jason Statham and sharks were definitely the reason that people are going out to see this movie. And I think a lot of people are walking out of these movies very disappointed. There was a lot of people in the theater with me that were disappointed, and they were groaning the entire time. I've never heard so many people talk throughout the movie. And like I said earlier, the commentary that they were having was priceless. The comments that they were making just made it all worthwhile. And I'm a member of the Movie Pass gang, so let's see how long that company lasts. I'm just glad that I haven't had to pay for these tickets, because this is probably one of the few movies that I actually would have gone back to the box office and asked them for my money back. There was one more scene that I wanted to talk about, and after that we'll go ahead and wrap up, because like I said, there's not much to say about this movie. Whatever you can imagine in your head about this movie is probably what you're going to see, okay? The one last scene that I want to talk about is there's a scene where the little girl is walking through the laboratory. She's playing, because she lives down there with her mother, and her mother, who is the peeping Tom by looking in through the door and watching Jason Statham undress and get dressed. She's walking through the corridors, which are all made of this, see-through glass or polycarbonate, whatever, some technical term that can withstand the pressure down there. And all of a sudden, the shark is right there, and it's just staring her down. Like I said, I am not a marine biologist, but I don't think that a shark can really hover and just stay in one spot, because they are mad dogging each other for a good 5 to 10 seconds. He's not flipping his fins. He's not doing anything. He is literally just there. And they don't show his fins moving at all. And then you see it in the trailer, he chomps down on the glass, but the glass doesn't break. I mean, again, there needs to be some realism to this, especially when you're dealing with something like a megalodon or a shark. This movie definitely would have done a lot better had it come out right during Shark Week. I think they could have organized that a little bit better, and they could probably have made just a teeny tiny bit more money. I know a lot of people end up really looking forward to Shark Week with Discovery, and again, this movie is just awful. I couldn't believe it. There really isn't anything that I can say that would make this any much better for anyone. There's a scene where Jason Statham actually outswims the shark. I mean, seriously, are you kidding me? It was bad, guys. All around bad. And like I said, this is going to be probably one of the shortest podcasts I ever do, because there's nothing to say about this movie. It was just awful. Awful, awful. Trust me when I say it is not worth the time for you to spend any money whatsoever. The only reason that it isn't scoring lower than a 4 is because some of the scenes with the comedy and the banter between the characters was actually a little worthwhile. There's a scene where Jason is swimming in the water. He is the one who, I guess, draws the lucky straw to tag the shark. And he's singing a song. And the song that he's singing is just keep swimming, because he's trying to psych himself up to actually swim with a megalodon that is trying to eat him. So, not worth it, guys. Really not worth it. I'm definitely sticking to my 4. It is a solid 4 for me. You be the judge, Let me know what you think about this movie. Let me know what you think about Jason Statham swimming with a 90-foot shark. Oh, and then there's the scene where Jason Statham is in a submarine. The megalodon has taken a chunk out of it, okay? And now there's a sharp ridge along it. And now Jason Statham is using this submarine as a pocket knife, essentially. He swims right underneath him, and he maneuvers in such a way that he stabs the Megalodon right at the neck and just slices him in half. But the Megalodon keeps going, there's blood in the water, and then all these little teeny tiny sharks come and they start eating the Megalodon. And that's how he wins. Really? That's the best that you could come up with? And of course, everybody gets out of the water, and everybody, even the Maltese makes an appearance at the end of the movie, and everybody's happy, and then they start playing Hey Mickey, You're So Fine and Ty again, and everybody's la-di-da. Guys, there's just nothing I can say about this movie that's gonna change my mind. And I'm actually really glad that nobody went with me. If somebody else was on this podcast with me, I mean, I would feel embarrassed for them, just because there's nothing that can be said. That's going to do it for this edition of GOAT Movies, guys. I'm sorry I don't have a better movie for you. Hopefully we'll be able to see something soon. There are a couple of other podcasts in the works, a couple of other movies, guest stars, that we are just trying to finalize the scheduling. If you would like to be a guest star on this show, all you have to do is shoot me an email, goatmoviespc@gmail.com. That's goatmoviespc@gmail.com. You can also follow me on Instagram @goatmoviespc. And we will see you next week, guys. Thanks.